Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa alihi tahirin. Today we are continuing our lessons of comparative religion, and we are on the final lesson of this short course. And this course is short as compared to what can actually be taught in depth. We could have a whole program of comparative religion. You could have a whole like university program on comparative religion, and a good chunk of that can be about Abrahamic religion, and even more. And this field has sometimes lack of research by some researchers. If you go search around, you will find some things said that if you knew the different points about comparative religion, you'll find that those people who put together those websites or researches, they did not do their research properly. Or when they speak about it in a majlis, they may not have done their research properly. Now, of course, that's not saying that everything they say is false, but if they've done their research properly, then they should be talking in a different way, and some of the things that they may say is not correct. And we need to have a level of correctness. We need to understand these different religions, and especially due to the fact that Islam comes and corrects the mistakes of Ahlul Kitab. So we must understand who the audience that we're talking to. Some of these verses and different things in Islam, they're speaking to Ahlul Kitab, and we learn from them as well. They're for us as well, and for others they could take lessons from and learn from them as well. But we're addressing a certain type of people. Now, how can we talk to those people correctly if we don't even know what they actually believe? Okay, so in light of this, we can have dialogue and we can learn to open up and and stand on common ground and start working towards a bright future of obedience to God, realization of God, and building bridges that help us to reach obedience to God. So, in this last lesson, as you know, I've brought some proofs to show you that Islam is a secure and the true religion that should be followed. And I've brought some critiques of different things and some comparative points about different things. Here, I'm going to bring some proofs from the Holy Quran from a linguistical aspect. Now, before we begin, we must mention as a premise that Prophet Muhammad he grew up in the Arabian Peninsula in a period of time called the Age of Jahiliyyah. What's the Age of Jahiliyyah? The period of ignorance. People were at their low levels of knowledge and research and thinking. Among the Quraysh in the history, it lists only about 17 or 18 people who knew how to read and write amongst Quraysh in those early days prior to the Islamic mission. After Allah the Exalted sent Islam, reading and writing became more popular and became flourishing. But in the time that Prophet Muhammad came, sallallahu, it was very, very much not popular. Society at that time was steep in foolishness, steep in ignorance, superstitions, immoralities, and corruption. Of course, when you look at any society in history, you can find some positive points and some negative points. But the fact is that this period of time was a time steep in Jahiliyyah. Paganism was widespread. And what's more idiotic or foolish and ignorant and immoral and corrupt than idolatry? Paganism was widespread, and some would even bury their own daughters in the ground. How can any moral people do such a thing? When somebody wants to kill their own child, you have to question their moral status. They are being immoral. So the Prophet Sallallahu, he was unlettered and he could not read or write. He was not listed amongst those who knew how to read and write also. So if he was amongst those who could read or write, it would have been documented. Not only would it have been documented in the history, but you would have seen the enemies of Islam using it. Hence, the amount of information you find in the Holy Quran is a miracle. It's a miracle to be to that this Quran was dictated to humanity through a person who's known as an unlettered person, who hasn't gone and sit in the yeshivas of the time, hasn't gone and sat in the churches, seminaries of the time. There was no yeshiva, you know, but it's yeshiva's like the hausa for the Jews. But they had maybe different types of education systems back then. But I this our Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu, he was not educating these places. He didn't go take a PhD. He didn't go take a bachelor's degree. He was unlettered. Look at this noble verse of the Holy Quran. وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ خَلْقُ السَّمَوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَاخْتِلَافُ أَلْسِنَاتِكُمْ وَأَلْوَانِكُمْ إِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ لَآيَاتٍ لِلْعَالَمِينَ. لِلْعَالَمِينَ. Among his signs and from his ayat, from his signs, is the creation of the heavens and the earth. وَاخْتِلَافُ أَلْسِنَاتِكُمْ, and the differences of your tongues. So, the variations of your languages. وَأَلْوَانِكُمْ, and your colors. So the differences of your tongues and your colors, the differences of your languages and your colors. See, Islam from the very basic and most primary resource teaches us what? Not to be racist in accordance with color. Not to be racist due to language. Language and color in Islam is a sign of the Creator, a sign of God. And if you study them, you should see, inshallah, that Allah is the Creator. So look at this verse, it continues. So it says, and the differences of your languages and tongue and colors. Inna fi dhalika laayatin lil alamin. Verily, certainly in that, it has a double emphasis here. In Arabic, it doesn't make sense to do it in English, but in Arabic it does. So it's like saying, verily, certainly, or certainly in that, certainly is signs. It's indefinite, right? It's signs. For who? Lil alameen, for those who know. You know something else that you could take from this? Is look at it from the aspect of as a motivation, as an encouragement to study. You can have an encouragement to study languages, to study peoples, their skin colors. Anyhow, this is Surah 30, Ayat 22. So language is a sign, and we should be looking for signs in languages. In the differences of the tongues and the languages are signs. There, this ayat, this verse of the Holy Quran, calls our attention to the differences in the languages. Now, here we shall show you some discoveries between the languages. However, these do not negate the literal meaning and apparent meanings in Arabic, of course. They're just things that if you dive deeper into the language, you could find some differing things. We still have the apparent meaning. We're not saying that the meaning is different than the Arabic meaning in that time. We're saying that when you study different languages, you could find an extra layer of interesting points. Nor are we doing tafsir here, but rather we are just showing some interesting discoveries between different languages in the Quranic verse or the verses. Let's look at this verse. You may know this verse, the famous verse about the completion of the religion of Islam. And this verse is said to have been revealed on the day of the appointment of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam as the Imam, as the Amir al-Mu'mineen, as the successor. Al-yawma akmaltu lakum dinakum wa atmamtu alaykum ni'mati wa raditu lakum al-islama dina. Today I have perfected your religion for you, and I have completed my blessings upon you. And I have, as transinterpretation of it, approved Islam as your religion. This is just partial ayat, Surah 5, ayat verse 3. Islama Dina. Islam, a religion. The word Islama means to submit or to surrender. So it means to submit or to surrender. The word al-Islam and the word Muslim, Muslimun, Muslimin, Muslimat are derived from this word, which means to submit or to surrender. So technically, Islam is to submit to God's will and command. And a Muslim, in the literal meaning, is the one who submits to God's will and command. This verb, salima, is an Arabic verb, which corresponds to a Hebrew word. Hebrew has a similar word, shalom or sholim. Sholim, you can see there's just a difference, sheen and a sod. A sheen and a seen, rather, not a sod. We have a, in Arabic, we have a seen, and Hebrew, we have a sheen. Sholim means to be complete, sound, to be complete and sound. So when you look at the Hebrew of this similar word, it means to be complete and sound. Now, do you see the connection? In Aramaic and Syriac, it is to be complete and safe. So we could see a different layer, right? Like the maybe we could say and we could understand that through submission to God, through surrender to God, we are safe. We become complete. We become sound. These are just some uh, ideas about the connection of. Remember, I said I'm not doing tafsir. Tafsir is something we don't want to say that this is exactly what the word means. We're just see these different meanings, and we're trying to connect some kind of um, possible um, enlightenments from the two, right? In the above verse, akmaltu, I perfected, and atmamtu, I completed. Here we can notice that the noble verse in Arabic seems to be conveying many connections to the ancient meanings of the word in other languages. Now look, here's the point. We can see a similar connections here. Like if you looked at the Hebrew and the Aramaic, I said it was to be complete, to be safe, to be secure. But when you look at akmaltu means completed, tamamtu means completed. So here it gives that kind of it gives you could see a similar words being brought in, right? It's just an interesting note. Okay. Next one is in Surah 6, ayat 127. Lahum daru as-salami inda rabbihim wa huwa waliyuhum bima kanu ya'malun. For them shall be the abode of peace. Daru salam. Near their Lord, with their Lord. And he will be their guardian, wali, and he is their guardian. He is their wali. In what they were doing. With what they were doing. With what they were doing. So they transinterpret it as because of what they were doing. So salam means peace in Arabic. Salam means peace in Arabic. You notice we say salam alaikum, salam alaik, alayhi salam, alayha salam. It means peace. But this word as well is derived from that previous uh, uh, words, right? So in Arabic, it means salam means peace. In Arabic, Islam means submission to God, technically. So, maybe again we could say that there's peace because there's some kind of submission, some kind of submission, right? However, this word has a common Semitic root. It is used in all Semitic languages in the sense of peace. Some suggest it developed out of the Hebrew and Aramaic and then passed on to other Semitic languages, but you have to research that. In Hebrew, it is soundness, then peace. In Aramaic, it is security, right? So you see, you got a similar, like, a very nice um, depth to the language when you look at the different Semitic languages. Now, let's look at this verse in Surah 19, Ayat 2. ذكر رحمتي ربك عبده زكريا. This is the remembrance. Dhikr means remembrance or reminder of the mercy of your Lord to his servant Abdahu, his servant Zachariah. Okay. The name Zachariah in Hebrew is Zachariah. Zachariah means God remembers. Zakar, this is like Zakar, right? Zachariah, Zachariah. See, this is the similar root. So it means in Zakar in Hebrew means to remember. So you see in this noble ayat, you may find that it is conveying the possibility of the connection between the ancient meaning and the story of the verse. Dhikru rahmati rabika, the remembrance of your Lord. And this is the name Zachariah in Hebrew means God remembers, the remembrance of your Lord to his servant Zachariah. So this is a sign that this is revealed by God. We see these things. Now again, I'm saying these are just possible things we see with the connection of the words. So we cannot give tafsir. We cannot say for sure God intended that, but these are very beautiful things that come out in it that show that this was written by God and not by some person. Even your educated people may not know more than a couple languages or may not even know another language. The Prophet Muhammad was unlettered. He was uneducated in these things. Okay. So we see another one here. This one's about Prophet Yahya. Surah 19, Ayat 12. Ya Yahya, خذ ال- خذ الكتاب بقوة وأتيناه الحكمة سبيا والحنانا من لدنا وزكاة وكان تقيا. O John, O Yahya, take the book with strength. And we gave him judgment, hukmah, while he was still a child, sabiya, and compassion, hanan, compassion from us, and purity from us. He was one who had taqwa. He was God-weary. He was one who had taqwa. He was muttaqi. Okay. Now, in Hebrew, in Hebrew, the equivalent to John is Yohanan. Notice it here. Hanan, Yohanan, which uh, means the living God has been gracious. Has been gracious. In this verse, we find Hananan, and graciousness is mentioned as well. So you can see it's interesting words coming here around these these verses. Now, last one before we end the class is about Prophet Ishaq. Okay, we have wa wamra wamra'atuhu ka'imatun fadahikat fadahikat, and she laughed, then she laughed. Fabasharnaha bi ishaqi bi ishaqa. It's a foreign word, right? Wa min wara'i wa min wara'i ishaqa Yakuba. So his wife, who's his wife? Lady Sarah. She's very old at the time. She was standing by and laughed as we gave her the good tidings of Ishaq and of Yaqub. The Hebrew name Yishaq means he laughs or will laugh. Sahak in Hebrew is to laugh. We also see here that the story as presented in its true form in the Quran unveils a connection to the name as is Prophet Ishaq alayhi salam. So these are some interesting points you may find about the difference about in between the languages. How you can find some signs between the languages, and there's probably many more. This is just brief, but if you spend time learning some Semitic languages like Aramaic, Hebrew, then when you go ancient Hebrew, of course, and when you go and look into the Quranic verses and you know the Arabic very well, you may be able to find many different, very interesting connections and signs in the languages. So that is everything for this lesson and this course. We will end this course here, and uh, inshallah, it was beneficial, and we've covered some comparative points and some differences between the Abrahamic religions. Wa akhiru da'wana and alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.